All right, good evening, everyone. It is Wednesday. That means it's time for Tavern Talks at the Shifty Board, where we talk everything D&D here on the Master of Dungeons Twitch channel. We are joined tonight by one of our chimerical collective of the Master of Dungeons Collective, Dontoshin. Welcome in, my good friend.
Hello,
How are
and thank you.
things? Yep.
Going well. Yes, going well.
Tonight we're going to be talking about advice for new dungeon masters. D&D can be kind of intimidating to get started. I mean, it's been around next year. 50 years is going to be around next year. Is its 50th anniversary. They're supposed to be doing the touching up, I should say, the core rule books again with some of the new playtest materials out for 1D&D, and it can be very intimidating if you especially with the shirt you're wearing right now. The brand new movie came out. There might be more people that are interested in playing because of that. I mean, it was a great film, I thought, and we're just going to talk about some different advice about how to get started, things to, things to kind of look out for, things to help make yourself a little bit more comfortable, things to kind of adhere to, things to kind of ignore, I guess. Would be a certain thing. So let's talk about the editions. How many editions of Dungeons and Dragons? When you started playing D&D? What edition did you play? Did you play Basic?
I first started playing Basic. It was the old red box. So it was Basic D&D and played through up to Expert and a little bit for Companion. But then by that time, I had my eye on the AD&D, which was first edition, and
that is
started playing there.
Yeah, that's something that's might be confusing to new players, DMs and players alike. Is that when people refer to first edition D&D, what they're basically meaning is Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. They dropped the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons when they came out with third edition of D&D, when Wizards of the Coast, with all of their Magic the Gathering money, bought TSR and kind of changed the way that not the basics of the game, but they did change the core. You still roll die 20s, you still roll the different polyhedral die, but instead of having low armor classes and this old thing called THACO, they changed it to where the higher is the better for everything all around, which was kind of confusing from the old system. So let's see, we had, first of all, the game started off as a miniatures rules, just for ancient medieval miniature gaming, and that's where you got the chainmail rules and such from. And then there was original D&D, which is a lot of people, well, especially with one D&D coming out, ODD. It was the most times when you see ODD, that refers to the original Dungeons and Dragons, which were these small little pamphlets, kind of in a way, that came in. Sometimes you get lucky and get the white box that contained three or four of them or something. But there were the basic rules, and that changed into they made advanced D&D and then basic D&D as well, which are how many? What did that went up to Immortals, I think, right?
Yeah, I went to the Immortals, and that was the last one of four editions of the Basic.
Well, five. That's right, because we had basic,
regular 4.
Yeah,
and then Immortals was the fifth one.
Yeah, that's what it was. So there are lots of editions of D&D, but don't worry about it. The majority of people that are newer players playing it are playing 5th edition. And there's a lot of older players and veterans of the game that are loving 5th edition because, as you mentioned, it does have that nostalgic feel, don't you think, of basic D&D in a way?
Oh, totally. Yeah, it does. Like some of the previous editions, they were, really good in some ways and not so great in other ways. But with 5th edition, things got, I guess, catered to the basic ideas of basic D&D, of being able to just join a game, start running a game quick and easy, knowing the rules to a point, but not being overly intimidated by having to know all these large hardback rules, books and stuff. You could just refer to them as needed. And I think 5th edition, it was a really great leap. It enabled DMs and players just to kind of get in and look at a few things and start playing.
Yeah. So you have original D&D, basic D&D, which is basic, expert, companion, masters, and immortal, different boxed sets. Then you have advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Then you have advanced Dungeons and Dragons second edition, which is referred to as first edition and second edition. Then you had D&D third edition. Then you had 3.5 where they adjusted some stuff. Then you had fourth edition. Then we have the current installment, which is fifth edition. And the best place to probably start off if you want to become a new player or DM is to go to the Wizards of the Coast website or the dmsguild.com and get the basic rules of the game, of the current 5th edition rules. You can take those and just start playing from there. It's got walks you through the basic things of combat, walks you through the basic things of creating characters, all of that stuff. That's where I would suggest starting off. Or if you want to actually start getting the books, you can start running as a DM even by just buying the 5th edition Player's Handbook. It's got basic creatures in there. It's got basic NPCs and stuff in the very back of the book, and it does teach you the basics of the game.
One of the great one of the great products that they came out with is that they had a basic rules in a box set, but then they came out with what's called the essentials, and it's in a box set, and it's pretty starter set. Yeah, the starter set was first. Then they had the essentials set, and the starter set was decent, but the essential set is really nice. I'm actually running a game with a small group of 15 and 16-year-olds, and they're just really into it, and that's what I'm starting them with, just so they can get an idea, because some of them want to be DMs later on with their own games. And that Essentials kit is a really good starter spot just to kind of get an idea. And then, or like you said, just jump right into the Player's Handbook and go from there.
Yeah, they also have a set. I'm not sure how easy it is to find anymore. You could probably find it on online or Amazon or something like that. But they also did a Stranger Things starter set as well. That was based around Stranger Things. And the newest starter set came out just after Gen Con. I think it was September of last year. We had some previews, some pre-release copies with Baldwin Games at Gen Con last year, which is the Dragons of Stormwreck Isle. That is the newest starter set for D&D. But yeah, you can start there. Those are great boxes to pick up. Like I said, the basic rules, you can get the PDF for free online. You can download that, print it out if you want, put it on a tablet. And what I would do is definitely, and this is something to talk about too, maybe you have some different suggestions. I would definitely sit down and read them all. Now, I would not, as Donnie mentioned earlier, don't be concerned with memorizing all the rules. Unless you're playing like organized play where you really need to know the rules as written.
Yes.
If you're just playing with your friends, I mean, it's, you can make your own stuff up. I mean, I'm sure we both, when we first started playing 40 years ago, that we both definitely made up stuff, made up our own rules if we couldn't find it. Of course, that's one of the reasons why eventually you make the jump from basic to advanced D&D back in the day, right?
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. Yeah, it even has a disclaimer in one of the old books. It's like it was written in the '70s, late '70s. I think it might have been the Dungeon Master's Guide or the Player's Handbook, but there was a note by Gary Gygax. Basically it said, if it's in the rules, go ahead and use it. If it's not in there, make your own rules. Play it how you want to. Just play.
Yeah,
it's your game. You can change the rules as needed, as a DM. With some.
Yeah, and it's like that golden rule of they always say treat other people how you want to be treated. With the golden rule with D&D is that the DM can make it up. The DM's it's not. I don't want to say the DM's always right, but the DM is kind of the final arbitrator of the rules and things that are going on, and that's something you'll have to decide too as a new DM. What type of dungeon master you want to be. If it's just with your friends and stuff like that, I mean, I've been doing it for decades, and I run all different types of games, from homebrew with a home group, some guys I've been playing with for 30 years that I met in college, to I mean, just we met. Dontoshin and I met playing Lord of the Rings online back in 2007, 2008, but.
Yes.
Just over the pandemic, we started playing more D&D together as well. But yeah, like if you're running for your group of friends and stuff, you know your friends. Just play and have fun. Don't be too harsh on them if you're a dungeon master. I guess one of the hardest things to learn, especially if you're an older person. When I say older, I mean it's like somebody in your 20s, 30s, 40s, learning to play D&D, is that it can feel kind of embarrassing. Is that the right word to use when you're role playing?
Self-conscious. You get
Yeah.
it's easy to get self-conscious. Almost like if you have never done any public speaking and you have to get up in front of an audience to speak for the first time or perform. Sometimes people just freeze up, and then it's the same as like when you're sitting around the table. Even if it's with your friends, at first it can be a little stage fright. You get a little uncomfortable and you get
I guess
self-conscious about acting out as something else. But then once you finally get into it and you kind of, learn that it's okay to act. You can role
yeah,
play and then
you have to
say
go back to
things.
being a. Oh, go ahead. No, go
Yeah,
ahead.
you just play. You just play,
Well, that's the
like you
thing.
did
You
when
have
you were a
to.
son.
Yeah, you have to relearn what you did when you were a kid. Like when you would play,
Play.
uh, play acting, make believe, pretend.
Hmm.
You did it when you were a child. You did it, when you were a kid growing up. Well, most people, I hope they did. It was, imagination type of thing. But like, you just have to relearn that again because it does. It is, when we get older, society, community, all that stuff like that. You
Hmm.
have to start. They say you have to start acting like an adult and such like that, and grow up and all this stuff. And you do have to kind of get back into that imagination type of thinking to bypass that. Because, like you said, you're afraid, self-conscious. A lot of people don't want to. They don't want to look stupid in front of their friends or something like that. But yeah, once you get into it and get past that, it's small, like stage fright. Yeah, like you said. Um,
It's like a excuse me. It's like you said, in being embarrassed. It's
mhm.
like the first time I've seen a lot of players, the first time they actually get to do it, they're really shy and they'll hang their head or their face will turn completely red or they'll just get or their voice will crack and they can't speak or something like that. But that's the first time. And
Mhm.
then if they have support with their friends and it's everybody's doing the same thing and it's you're having fun, you get over that and you're like, oh, that's an accomplishment. And you get better at it and you get better at it. And next time you do it, and eventually you're enjoying it every time and you're getting into different characters, using different voices. So yeah,
Yeah, and like,
getting used to it.
yeah, and they like when you first start, you don't have to, have the voices. You don't have to,
No.
role play with the characters. You don't have to. Oh, thank you for the follow. You don't have to. Act everything out. Even as the players, they don't have to role play the character. You say, well, my character does this, my character does that. That's totally fine. You don't have to
Yeah.
come out and be automatically involved in, role playing your character's personality and all that stuff like that.
No.
The
No.
really cool thing in fifth edition that they do have for that is you have your personality traits. You have like your bonds, your flaws, things like that. That can help once you do want to start role playing your character and acting as your character when you're speaking in game. It gives you some tips and stuff that you can, little ideas that you can use as like notes to play your character. Um, Now the other thing too is that something that I've been finding out, I've known it for a while, but I'm seeing it more and more and more, is that the community of Dungeons and Dragons, as you might have seen on some of the Tavern Talks previously, when we've interviewed some different people in the industry in our community around that, especially that work with me with Baldwin Games, the different storylines for the adventures and stuff we do there, is it's got a great and amazing online community. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh yes, totally. Yeah, the people are so supportive. Um, People like to share information, and when someone learns something new, they want to share it. It's natural to want to share what you know and what you learn, and it's really awesome because people are receptive and people are willing to share. So the community is really expanded over the past, I'd say, 10 years. It's amazing how many people play D&D now and are just the community has become this one big huge tribe. It's like a
Hmm.
tribe of like, oh, you play D&D. Oh, it's cool. It's like where it used to be like only certain people played D&D,
Play
but now
D&D?
you have all those guys or all those girls. Oh, you're one of those. You play D&D. Okay. Now it's like all walks of life. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Musicians, actors, businessmen, all businesswomen. It's all people.
yeah, yeah. And like so don't be afraid or intimidated to talk with veterans and such like that. Let me turn myself. Sorry, I'm getting some notifications here. I don't have myself on stream mode.
Oop.
Streamer mode. Give me a second to switch that over real quick. Turn that on. There we go. Turn on
Yeah,
streamer
I just
mode.
love the community. I love hearing famous people that play D&D now. Um, I mean, famous actors, famous artists, musicians, things like that, and you see them. Just recently, I was watching the Star Trek series Picard, and it was the third season of that, and one of the captains in there, was playing his role as a captain of a starship. But then one of the other players on there, Seven of Nine, if anybody's familiar with her, they were in there, but then they were on Twitter, and it showed them they were playing D&D together. So he was introducing her to D&D and had a whole table of people, and here he is playing Starship Captain on Star Trek on the big TV network, and then now he's running a game as a DM.
Yeah,
It
and I
was
think
it was
that
it was neat.
that I think that's bringing it that obviously entertainment's bringing it out more to be
Oh yeah,
recognizable. Obviously, Critical Role had a big influence on it because you have so many
big
people
time,
that
big
watch
time.
so many different anime or different shows and animated series and such where you have all these voice actors, and Critical Role came out was a big deal. Obviously, we talked about Stranger Things. They play in D&D,
Playing
and
D&D.
generally, I mean, literally the world years of and the ages of the characters in Stranger Things are me and you. That was our age back then in that time
Totally,
period.
totally.
But like you see, like I watched a TV show called The Rookie. Nathan Fillion, Firefly, all that stuff like that. They have their characters on that show that are police officers that play Dungeons and Dragons and
Oh
all of that.
really?
Yeah,
I have to
but
check that. I saw the
something
advertisement.
going back to the community thing is don't be afraid to ask because everyone can give you
Yeah.
some advice. The thing to be kind of careful about is that one thing that veteran players will love to do is they will love to tell you, I mean, I mentioned it a lot. We mentioned, you mentioned a lot and stuff like that. It's not a brag. I don't feel it's a brag. It's not meant to be a brag when we say, we've been playing for 4 decades. It's just, wow, we've been playing for 4 decades. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the
I
same
mean,
time,
yes.
we always talk about getting experience. So, like, if we run online, we run at conventions, we run in game stores, we run home group games, we run for lots of different walks of life, lots of different situations. Gives you a different insight to the game than somebody that's been running, for 20 years and playing with one group. And I don't want to kind of beat that into the ground unless we talk about it on here, but.
Mhm.
Don't feel intimidated if someone has been playing longer than you. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're a better game master or that they're going to that you're not going to be as good as they are. As I always mention, for like I learn stuff from new DMs and new players all the time. It's one
Oh,
thing that if you, once you
every
once
time.
you start that journey, I always talk about how it does take everyone can DM, but only there are certain types of people that are drawn to being a dungeon master
Hmm.
because you're really like you mentioned earlier, musicians, stuff like that. I'm a musician. I always view myself as an entertainer. That's one of the reasons why I started this channel, why I started the brand, all the stuff like that was because of the pandemic. I couldn't play music anymore. So I had to figure out something. We were able to, and seeing as popular as D&D also became popular during the pandemic because people were playing online and you had a lot of access to it. So don't be
Hmm.
afraid or don't think that you're not going to be as good as someone else. They're, learning as much as you are. Hopefully, they're learning. And then if they say that this is how you how you play the game, then you know go look for advice somewhere else because there are
Right.
different ways to DM as I mentioned all the time on this channel, when we talk about our experiences and our advice, this is just what we would do. And it's just,
Yes.
feel free to listen to it. Feel free to ignore it. Feel free to apply what you want from it. Stuff like that. Anything to add for
That's one
that?
of
Sure.
Yeah, it's one of the great things about it is that people can, play it how they want to. DMs and players, it's such a expansive game that it encompasses so many different play styles and so many different worlds and so many different uh, w- ways to play. And however you play, you're not wrong. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, if everyone is enjoying it and you're having a good time and you're able to, express yourself one way or not. Some people don't, like you said, don't do any role playing at all.
Mm-hmm.
Some people really get into it.
Well, Angelos
And
has a
people are,
point there.
oh yeah,
I was just saying, Angelos has a point there in chat. He has a hard time
oh,
not wanting to help when playing with new GMs. I used to feel that way myself as well.
mm, yeah,
Because I was like, oh, I wouldn't do it this way or I wouldn't do it that way. Um, if certain DMs came to me about something, I'll generally say if I sit down with a newer GM, it's like, hey, if you have any questions during the game, go ahead and feel free to ask me. I'm not going to
hmm
impose my style or anything on that when you're playing as a DM, especially with newer DMs. You get 5 or 6 sessions under your belt. Hey, you're going to relax a little bit more. You get like 20 under, you're going to definitely see some improvement in your DMing. You're going to start remembering things that you might have forgot. It's just like with the streaming here. I always forget something, just like a musician. You're never going to play a perfect gig. You're never,
hmm
as a DM, going to be, have run a perfect game. Everything you're going to forget something, and that's okay. You don't have to know everything because there are definitely players out there, especially experienced players, that are going to know all the rules.
right,
But just as a new DM, go ahead and lean on the veteran players and the veteran DMs at your table. It's not there's nothing wrong being a new DM and asking them for help. Like Angelos mentioned there, you really want them to do a good job. You want them to have fun
hmm
because they're a player too. The one thing that a lot of people forget is that the DM and the players are all playing a game together. The DM is a player as well. They just have a different response. They just have a little bit more responsibility. So it is really good for the players if you're a new player or an older player, veteran player, whatever, to make sure that you know your character because it's really hard for DMs to remember everything that your character can do. Um, and that's a good point to talk about is being a veteran player and helping newer GMs out, newer dungeon masters, is
oh
to
yeah,
definitely number one be patient. Uh, help them through if they ask. Try not to do too much guidance unless they're asking, for advice. Um, Obviously, we do give unsolicited advice on this channel, but that's the whole point of the channel is, hey, if you want to check it out, come watch us and check it out and,
right,
ask questions and stuff. And actually, like Angels did, bring stuff up in there, of course. But like, once you get, once you've been DMing for about a year or so, like my friend, I'm not going to say his name on here, but his nickname is Pickle, a really good buddy of mine. We started playing D&D together at our local game store here, and he just learned to be a DM. I taught him how to DM back in 2018, and he's in his I think early 40s, mid 40s maybe,
mhm,
and he's gotten to the point where when we have our virtual D&D weekends like we did last weekend, he sells out his tables all the time because the players love his style. They love he's fairly relaxed. He also specializes in tier 4, which is 17th to 20th level. So
oh
there's
nice,
not a whole bunch of content out there for that, which is definitely helps him out. But yeah, he's only been DMing for 5 years, and he's become a great dungeon master. So you can pick it up and just a matter of months learn how to play as a DM. You know, find your own style. Like I said, definitely
oh
read
yeah,
the rule books. Read the rule books definitely. You may not absorb them all, but I know it's weird. You mentioned it earlier, so that's kind of stuck in my in my weird brain, my neurotic brain here about musicians. What I
yeah,
always tell people is that look, if you want to learn how to play the guitar, I can teach you the basics of playing guitar. But I can't teach you to play like Eddie Van Halen. Why? Because Eddie Van Halen's not my style. For one, I'm not a lead player. I'm a rhythm player. I'm more Malcolm Young than Angus Young. But
mhm,
like you can teach people the basics and you can learn the basics, but you're going to have to find your own style as you DM. And the more you DM, the more you're going to discover that. And the more games you play, regardless, like we mention all the time, regardless of what advice we can give you, there's nothing that any dungeon master is really going to be able to say. There's going to be things that they're going to say that you're going to go, oh, that's going to set off a light bulb in your head. But there's nothing that they're going to tell you. Yes. Exactly, eureka. But there's nothing that they're going to tell you that's going to make you a great DM. That just comes with what? Running games.
Running games, practice.
Yeah.
More practice, playing, experience, getting your own XP. You get your XP as a DM. The players get their XP to move up. And you level up as a DM by getting your own XP by running the game. And each time you get it, you learn a new technique or a new way of doing things. And even if a player is being helpful, in the game, like you're not sure about a rule or you're going to make a call, so to speak, and then the player says, "Oh well, what about this?" And then you think, "Oh, I didn't think of it that way." And then you may go with that, or you may not. You may make your own decision. But it's a wonderful thing to be able to take advice and be humble, and at the same time be able to share the game and get your own experience and find your own play style and level up and kind of like, oh, I've got this. I'm getting better each time. Yeah.
And one thing that mentioning that like that is that always remember it's a game. Like you said, the whole thing about being humble is make sure to remember that you're there to have fun. And sometimes players might get a little, especially veteran players, they might get a little into the game, or you do have some players, and not like I have a player that I like playing with the player. He's great. He's been playing for a while. I know that style player, his style of play is not the same cup of tea for a lot of DMs, and they might not prefer to play with a player of that nature. And I do have to sometimes, like, because we play online pretty much all with this player pretty much exclusively, and every once in a while we'll have to send them a whisper and roll 20 or something to say, hey, kind of ease back a little bit, try not to dominate too much, because the thing is that they're not doing it on purpose. It's just they're really into the game. They have
often excited.
Yeah, exactly. So always remember that everybody's wanting to have a good time. And sometimes if you have to take a player aside and mention, say, hey, let's we're all here to have fun, that type of stuff. But like watching games, playing games, I always say playing games is better than watching games. But if you can't play a game, then definitely watch the game. There are plenty, like we have our show. We're not going to be on this Sunday because it's Memorial Day weekend. I'm going to be doing a stream from 7 to 10 p.m. on Sunday still, but some of our players and such like that have family commitments and things along those lines that they'll be doing on Sunday evening and Monday and such. But you can watch our live play stream on Sunday evenings. We're playing through the keys from the Golden Vault. We're bringing in, we even had our last session, we had Fun Conscious and Sandolphin, sorry, on with us, playing with us. They weren't new D&D players, but they were new to Adventurers League. That can give you some insight to Adventurers League. There's lots of different channels on Twitch. There's lots of different things on YouTube where we have live plays. If you want to go back and watch all of our previous games for live play, to learn different tricks as a DM, there's lots of different channels on YouTube, as I mentioned, and Twitch, where there's games going on all the time. Technology. What can we say about technology?
This is great.
Back in the day, it was like,
Yeah, it was just a struggle just to get everyone together. You had to call up on the phone and stretch it into the other room with the cord, and so you could shut the door and have a conversation to get your buddies to meet. And then, are they going to come at this time or whatever? And then they finally show up, and then it's like, oh, maybe so-and-so is going to show up, and then they hung up, and, it's like trying to get people to your house, and you go down in the basement and you start to try to play, and then so-and-so has to leave or whatever. It's like, it's such a nice thing to be able to have this technology, to be able to be on camera, even though like at first, a lot of people were intimidated. I myself was a little bit at, a long time ago when we were, first starting to do being live on camera. I had experience from being on camera beforehand, so that helped. But playing with the modern technology, being able to just pull up rules on your phone or pull up a dice roller on your phone. If you forget your dice, if you don't have your physical dice, you can do a digital, just like you. Or if you're playing online, like different platforms, often you can roll the dice right on screen. So and then with having voice, with being able to hear and see your other players, at least hear them, and everyone is able to collaborate and just enjoy the game.
And if
There's
you're
no replacement for being in person. I really, really enjoy being in person, but being online is it's its own thing. It's its own entity. It's really neat because the way that a game will flow when it's online, it's different than interpersonal interactions, and it's really awesome to have this technology, like you said.
And plus, you could, like, as you mentioned, your phone and such. Pardon me. You can get like your iPad or a tablet or something like that. Get your D&D Beyond app on there. There's lots of free content.
Yeah, just have it ready.
There's lots of free content. You can get the basic rules of the game on D&D Beyond for free. You can get the new one D&D playtest stuff. They also have some free adventures that you can have for free as well. And there's lots of different resources out there. Also, as I mentioned, the Dungeon Masters Guild, which is dmsguild.com. You can get lots of material on there. Lots of it is pay what you want or free. Definitely, if it's a pay what you want, at least throw the author a little bit. If you're going to put anything up on the DM's Guild, I always recommend to not put down pay what you want. Always give yourself a value. But if you do see something on there you like, let's play what you want. I always say at least throw them $1 or $5 for at least creating the content, putting up there. But there's a lot of stuff that's actually free on there as well. But yeah, the like
a lot of the free stuff is really good. I've went through quite a bit myself. I was like, oh, it's free. They're just giving it away, and it's nice. And then you play that, and you see that they actually have other products that they've written, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna try that. And then you can pay the $5, $10, $12 for whatever they put out, when it's worth it to you if it's really well done. A lot of it is.
Yeah, the DM's Guild's really great because the whole concept of it is that as a content creator, you can go to the DM's Guild, and basically anything you put up there, you make 50%, and Wizards of the Coast makes 50%. If you want to write adventures and things like that, you have to use established D&D worlds that are currently being used. If you want to do homebrew D&D and use the SRD or the Open Gaming License, you can actually write your own content for your own D&D worlds and all that stuff like that. But instead of putting them up on the DM's Guild, you can put them up on Drive-Thru RPG. It's the same company, the same group. So if you want to do stuff like that, there's, like I said, you can go to Drive-Thru RPG as well. There's lots of free stuff. It's basically the same sort of platform. You only have to have one account, and you'll have an account for both Drive-Thru RPG and the DM's Guild. But yeah, like I said, just watch games if you can't play. Always ask questions. Find a local game store, and even if you are just learning how to play and you don't want to necessarily play, or you don't want to necessarily DM to start with, I almost guarantee you, I can't guarantee you, but I can almost guarantee you that any game that's being played at your local game store, if you say, hey, do you guys care if I sit down and watch? They're going to say, go ahead, sit down, yeah. Actually, most of the time, they're going to say, do you want to play? That's what
exactly.
they're going to say.
They'll hand you a character sheet and say, here.
Yeah, but don't feel embarrassed to just sit down and watch, just to figure it out. And then when the game's over, maybe see if the players and the DM, most of them, if a few of them at least, will stick around and answer questions you might have. And I'm sorry, a game store owner or someone behind the counter is always willing to talk about all types of games. And especially now, you will find some different people are more board gamers than they are RPG, like tabletop RPGs. I'm sorry, video gamers that are watching. I don't consider video gamers gamers. They're video game players. They're video gamers. Sorry, don't hate me. I still play video games too. But the old turd gamer was, you really didn't call people that played, Atari gamers back in the day, right?
Yeah, that's probably the different distinctions of gamers. Gamer here, gamer. But what kind of gamer? Oh, okay, yeah. But gamer in itself, yeah, it goes back to tabletop RPGs. That's kind of if you're a gamer, then that was the OG, I guess you say, the OG gamer since
Yeah, there we go. There we go. I don't want to exclude video game players.
Oh,
I love,
no,
I
no,
love,
no,
I,
not at
I
all.
love video games. I have tons of
I
friends
love
that,
video
and they
games.
are
Yeah.
gamers. They are gamers.
Yes.
But I don't know. I guess I was watching some streams because like I said, I watch content, other content creators as well to get
Mhm.
information as well. And it's really weird that okay gamers kind of starting to become like an insult or something, which is really weird. Some of the different streamed games and stuff. I'm like,
Oh,
how is that becoming something like, it's really odd. I don't know. Maybe it's just I'm old. That's probably what it is. But
well,
yeah,
I'm used to those insults because back in the day, it's like quite a few people will be like, oh, derogatory terms like nerd and loser and this, that, and the other is like back in when it wasn't popular. And if you did play, then that meant you weren't popular. But now I look back, I'm like, who has the last laugh?
yeah,
It
yeah.
came full circle.
Well, yeah, it's like
It was,
looking at the popular culture now, and it's all gaming, D&D, comic book movies, all of the stuff like that. Where when you were into things of that nature back in the day, it was kind of frowned upon. But like I said, or like we mentioned earlier about hey, all gamers are gamers, is the whole thing of people opening up and people being more accepting, which is why if you want to become a new dungeon master or new player, now's the time to do it. I mean, it's never been more accessible, uh, pretty much than it's ever
oh,
been than it is right now, and it's just going to, I think, and not just for just D&D, but all types of whether it be video games, board games, card games, just role-playing games in general. There's so much accessibility to that because of, as we mentioned earlier, technology.
and I love
Um,
how diverse it is now that it's so many different people around the world from all different walks of life are able to play and get into it, and that's accepted is because everybody's accepted. It doesn't matter. You can play. If you want to play, you can play. It doesn't matter what you are, as long as you're a cool person. All you have to do is be cool and want to have fun, and
yeah.
people will have open arms and say, "Come on, let's play."
Yeah, and
There
as we
are.
mentioned earlier, you are going to find some older veterans, and generally,
Yeah.
I mean, we have white beards, of course, but you are going to meet some of the older people that have been like they were in their 30s back when the game came out, or I'm sorry,
Yes.
in their 20s back when the game came out, or whatever, or that are still having a little bit of time, or a little bit of rough time, I should say,
Hmm.
adjusting to the openness of the game, the inclusion that's in the game now. I had to deal a lot, like when we talked about safety tools well, shoot, we've been doing this almost for 3 months now. It's awesome.
Hmm.
Maybe a month or two back, we talked about safety tools, and we did have
Right.
some people that didn't really necessarily understand what they were or didn't see the significance of having those in there. Um, which is okay if they don't understand, but once they
Mhm.
start having them available and understanding, as you mentioned earlier, there's people from all walks of life, and I always bring up just be open-minded about it and learn and grow. We can sit back, of course. There are going to be veteran DMs that are going to, and veteran players that are going to want to. It's kind of like Star Wars fans,
Right.
thinking that in the way, like, I mean, I saw Star Wars on opening day when it first came out when I was 4 years old. Memorial Weekend. I shortly turned 5, like a couple days later. But next week, actually, I'm going to be 51. But I remember watching that with my dad and being like blown away. And I can understand people somehow in their memories they kind of warp that memory into some sort of ownership over the game.
Mm.
They
Yes.
get upset about it. So you will occasionally. It's not. It's very very rare that it's going to happen. That are going to find veteran players that are not necessarily going to be as open. Like they're more into like advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and that's all they play. They don't play any of the
Right.
newer editions or anything like that, which is fine. I mean, it's like you said earlier, you can
Totally.
play exactly how you want.
Play how
But
you want.
there's still stuff to learn. But definitely go to your store, go online, go to conventions if you have to. If you've never been to a gaming convention, It's one of the most fun fun things you can do. There are people that will plan for Gen Con to be their family vacation every year, and they bring the whole family and they just spend, Wednesday night through Sunday afternoon just playing games, board games, card games, D&D. I'll be there running D&D, like I have been for the past 6-7 years, 5-6 years, something like that, with the group that we're with. What are some conventions that you have in your area there?
Well, down south they have one in Georgia. I
Dragon
think,
Con?
yep, that one. And in Virginia they have several different ones, but they're mostly around colleges. Like at Virginia Tech, they have one, and a lot of the local shops, gamer shops and stuff like that, gaming shops, they'll all contribute and have fun. So one time I went to one there, and George R. R. Martin was there as a guest speaker
Oh, okay.
before the Game of Thrones TV show came out and everything,
Okay.
and the books were there, and I had read the books, and I actually had his RPG book that he had signed, and I brought it up and I showed it to him again. And he looked at me and went, "I've already signed this once. You want me to sign it again?" I was like, "No, don't sign it again. I'll just maybe personalize it." He said, "You're not going to sell it." I was like, "No, that's why I want you to
My name
personalize
is
it."
there, yeah.
Yeah,
Personalize
and
it.
so he did that, and he initialed it again, whatever, and he was like, he was impressed. He was like, "Oh," I was like, I don't know if he's impressed or not, but I was impressed that he thought, well, he's not going to sell it, because he kind of gave me a look like, oh, he's just going to do that. So, some of the local game shops and around the cities and stuff, that's some of the great places to go. But that's the ones I can think of is Georgia and Virginia there, and then of course Indiana, Wisconsin. Out west, I don't really know of many, but East Coast, there's quite a few. What's the other one? New York or Massachusetts? I think there's another big one.
Well,
Winter. What is it? What is it called?
There's PAX East and PAX West. PAX East is in
PAX East.
Philadelphia. I think that's
Okay.
beginning of December. I know Dragon Con is always the weekend of Labor Day, which is funny that you mentioned like local colleges, because back before Dragon Con was founded, we did a one-off convention at my university that I was going to, and we actually called it Dragon Con, which was funny because it was back
Dragon
like
Con.
the internet was brand new. We just basically went around took flyers to the different local game stores in East Central Indiana, and we ended up having a nice convention for it. It was great for our gaming club that we had at the university, because we used all the proceeds that we got from that to kind of put it into the gaming club we had, which is oddly enough called the Adventurers Guild.
Oh wow, nice.
Back in the early '90s, yeah. But yeah, there's the cool thing about being here in Indiana is that I have easy access to Gen Con. Every February, there's a really big D&D convention up in Fort Wayne, Indiana, which is called Winter Fantasy. That's usually in February. Sometimes I think once it was pushed into March. But that's actually, if you want to go to an inexpensive convention and have a blast playing Dungeons and Dragons, I would always recommend Winter Fantasy, because Fort Wayne is a fairly inexpensive town. You're going to get downtown at the convention center where it's played. There's no price gouging around the area. You can actually, Fort Wayne does have an international airport. You can get direct flights into it from different places, which that usually takes place sometime in February. That's a great convention to go to. Of course, we have Gen Con, which is the biggest gaming convention in the world every year, that moved to Indianapolis from Lake Geneva. But in Lake Geneva, you still have generally, there's not. Yeah, Gary Con's not the same weekends usually as Winter Fantasy. Dave's really good about making sure that Winter Fantasy is not around the same time, not the same weekend as Gary Con. But you can go up to Gary Con. That is where you're going to find a lot of older gamers, because Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, is where D&D was invented. TSR.
Oh yes.
Tactical strategies, all that stuff like that. That's where it was began. You're going to have a lot more AD&D, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Edition. You're going to have some Second Edition. You even have these newer games that are coming out that are really good. I've just been learning a new system, which is not new, I should say. It's been out. It's been out for a while now. But Dungeon Crawl Classics.
Yes.
they actually use a little bit of the open gaming license from third edition. So you have, instead of your saving throws that you have strength, con, wisdom, stuff like that in fifth ed, they go back to third edition with the fortitude, will, and reflex saves. But their sheets look very much like a basic D&D character sheet, and the play style of the game is like back in the day where you played a basic game and, oh, my character died, I got to make a new one. Oh, my character died, I got to make a new one, because it was just, we've just experienced the game. Now, I mean, obviously, both you and I know from playing games with you as a DM, you probably recognize from playing games with me as a DM that we're more oriented in the story now. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's an evolution now, and that doesn't mean that if you're starting out, you have to be concerned with the story. The thing that I do like is that you do have a lot of newer players, DMs and players alike coming in that are kind of oriented on the story more, to find out, well, hey, what happens in this adventure? I want to stay alive to play the next one, to see what the story, how the story progresses. But then you have Origins, which is usually late June, which is in Columbus, Ohio. That's a great one to go to. If you go to our YouTube channel, you can actually see our Redux interview with Belinda Baldwin from a couple weeks ago. That she's in Colorado area. She talks about a lot of the different West Coast conventions as well. I think PAX West is. I'm not sure if it's in spring, but I think it's out in Seattle, I believe. Don't get mad at me if I'm incorrect. My apologies if I am. But yeah, there's tons of great gaming conventions. They're even starting to add gaming D&D games, tabletop role-play games, to some of the Comic-Cons. Like, have New York Comic-Con. I'm not sure about San Diego Comic-Con. I don't really want to mess with that giant beast, because it's a little intimidating to go out there for as huge as it is. But I know that they're doing D&D Adventures League specifically at New York Comic-Con now. And there was a couple of conventions in Chicago as well that have been adding Dungeons and Dragons to it. So yeah, like I said, if you have a chance to go experience a convention, it's really, really great. And again, if you want to learn and talk about Dungeons and Dragons, a convention is a place to go, because you're going to find people that are going to talk about it nonstop. They will answer every question you can think about. They will tell you every war story they have about every one of their characters.
Immersed in it. You're just going to be eating and drinking and seeing it everywhere. People in costume, people not in costume. You're just it's going to all be right there, and you'll be able to absorb whatever you want and just have a good time.
Yeah. And like we mentioned earlier, our path is our path. Your path is going to be different for you as a DM and as a player. Just learn, take what you want from what you learn from other people, from what information they give you, and add what you want throughout the rest. It's your own journey. It's about having fun. It's a reason why they put it on their 5th edition books. It's the world's greatest role-playing game. It's just it's helped me through learning. I mean, math. It helped me with math in school.
Totally.
Because we started playing in middle school. It helped me with reading. It helped me to learn. They're like, oh, what's that word? Let's look it up in the dictionary or the encyclopedia, because we didn't have the internet.
Exactly. Yes. Oh, the encyclopedias. Oh boy. Oh yes. One thing I was thinking about when you were mentioning Dungeon Crawl Classics. Okay, so like, say if you're playing something like Dungeon Crawl Classics, and you roll up 4 characters, and 3 of them are going to get killed, and you might end up with 1 that you can continue on. Maybe. That's it's like hack and slash a lot of times, or the story is there, but it's not really deep. But along with that, the story. That's one of the things I'd like to point out to new DMs is learn how to be a good storyteller.
Yeah.
If you can learn how to tell a story, sure, it's one thing to regurgitate rules and the actions of combat and who's initiative and who's in the lineup and what happens and the rules about this spell or this attack. It's great, but a narrative is often given to you. If it's a well-written adventure, then the narrative is there. And then you can always ad lib on that narrative and take away or add to it. But once you become comfortable in learning how to tell a story, And it's kind of just goes back to like when you were a kid, you read stories to other people, or you read your own stories. Reading a book is, if you're able to impart that world,
Got immersion.
share that, immersion, that impart that immersion with other people of that world, then you're able to get them, even if you're playing not on paper or on the screen. If you're just playing theater of the mind, that's one way of playing D&D, is called theater of the mind. You can just, with your description of the area, the players don't even need to see it on paper. They don't need to see a miniature or a map or anything. You can just, tell them, and it's a really good skill to have. So that's something to concentrate on. And you don't have to be perfect at it. At first, you could just say, just a little blurb in the story. Just start out small, just a few paragraphs here and there. But and don't be intimidated by it. But it's a really good skill to learn. Is storytelling.
Yeah, and then eventually you'll get to the point, I should say, where you're going to want to, be a little bit more imaginative, creative, and, do your own adventures if you want to, do your own stories and stuff. Our stream on Tuesday nights, our Dungeons and Deliberations, is actually the past few weeks we've been going through. I've been sharing my process of how I write adventures for the Adventures League and all of that, but it's also a great progress to go through to create your own adventures, and it also can kind of do what you're talking about, which is the whole narrative idea of why these things are in there when you're playing, which actually we can probably, I was thinking about that for a topic, is the difference between running a pre-written adventure and a homebrew adventure you've made yourself. So we might be able to talk about that as a future topic. But it kind of walks through the process of what you're talking about, which is the whole element of being a storyteller and that element of that narrative in the adventures as well.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed the storytelling aspect of it. That it's because playing is, like you said, as long as we've been playing, you didn't. A lot of times you didn't have a pre-written adventure available. You had like what was in the rule book and maybe one or two modules. And modules were a big thing, It's like if you could got your hands on a new module, that was gold. And it was like, wow, a new module. But a lot of times you didn't have a module, or you had to play the old one, and then what happens after that one? Well, you make it up, and then you start telling the story, and then before you know it, your homebrew game or whatever it is that back in whenever you do it, your homebrew becomes your entire realm that you're playing in. It's often how it advances.
Yeah, my own campaign world is actually based off the Keep of the Borderlands.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But yeah, it is coming to the top of the hour, which is coming to the end of the stream here. Again, Dontoshin, thanks for jumping in and chatting tonight. I'm sure we'll
always
probably
a
have
pleasure.
you back. Maybe we can start doing it every other week, doing a thing where it's you and I just talking about stuff. Hopefully, we're not going to be boring all the people with our old school mentions all the time. But hey,
hopefully, maybe they get something out of it.
Yeah,
maybe just a little. Hopefully,
that's the point of us, being veterans and just imparting some advice if needed. But thanks. We got some nice viewers tonight. Well, thank everyone for coming in. Thanks for the new follow as well.
Everyone.
We did, if you notice down in your the Twitch stream here, we do have our Twitch channel points now, our gold pieces. You can buy stuff. You can redeem stuff there for our live play games to help the players out and maybe hurt my minions as the dungeon master. We also did get our merch store up and running as well. You can find that down below in the About Us section. You can join our community Discord channel, or our Discord server, I should say, if you haven't joined that yet, by clicking on the Discord panel down there. It does have links to all of our social media as well. If you're watching on YouTube at a later time or watching this on video on demand, please definitely check out all of our social media platforms and our YouTube. Give us a like there if you can, a subscribe if you can over there as well, and share it definitely with all your friends, family. Share it with your enemies. It's all good. Just bring them over, play some D&D, and talk about D&D with us.
Convert them. Convert your enemies.
There you go. We did also add a link for our tip jar down below if anyone wants to be generous and help us out there. Tomorrow, we will have a stream tomorrow and Friday from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m., which is our normal dungeon delving, where I play Lord of the Rings online. It is a free-to-play MMO. We do play on the Landreval server, and that's a lot of fun. We're trying to get our character Tyrannus, who is a hunter, up to maximum level. I haven't played the game in a number of years, just started recently playing, got back into it. It's D&D adjacent. We call it dungeon delving because we'll go through and do some dungeons and stuff on there for fun. And then on Sunday, we usually have our live play games from 7 p.m. Eastern to 10 p.m. Eastern. We're running through the Keys from the Golden Vault adventures. As I mentioned earlier in the stream here, that we're not going to have the live play stream on Sunday, as it is Memorial Day weekend, but I'm going to be bringing back one of our older show titles called Around the Campfire. We're going to do a little experiment with that, and we're going to play a horror game. I will let you know what that horror game is. I know, exactly, right? We'll let you know what that is if you tune in with us on Sunday evening to check that out. I'll be streaming that from 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern. And then, of course, next Tuesday, we'll have Dungeons and Deliberations back, completing the adventure of the Tower of Lore that we had started doing on Tuesdays. It is literally an adventure completely off the top of my head. I'm walking through talking about the process I do when I write adventures, whether it be for publication or for just running a homebrew game. I don't look at the adventure or anything like that during the week between the streams. I literally open up the stream and open up the adventure that we're working on, and again, just go through the process and make things up on the fly while we're on the stream. So definitely check that out if you can too. But that should be the end of the episode tonight. Anything to add, my good friend?
No, it was always a pleasure, and I hope that the viewers and the future viewers, if you're watching the recording, gain a little bit of insight and maybe just one little nugget or two as far as how to be a better DM, or if you're just starting, how to be a DM.
Yeah.
So, no, it was a pleasure.
All right. Thank you, brother. And take care, everyone. Have a great Memorial Day weekend, and we'll talk to you very soon. Happy adventuring.